They say that the ruby is the stone of the charismatic, the gem chosen by those who refuse to be bound by convention and instead write their own rules. It is no surprise, then, that Princess Margaret was utterly captivated by rubies and assembled a collection that perfectly reflected her bold, spirited, and dazzling personality. Some of her treasures are well known to the public, glittering symbols of her style and independence. Among them, the vivid red Cartier brooch stands out as one of her dearest companions, faithfully accompanying her to elegant race meetings and glittering royal receptions alike. Yet, behind the brilliance and sparkle of her most celebrated jewels lies a far more intimate world, a world woven from personal memories, emotional gifts, and artistic collaborations that only came to light after that renowned auction. These jewels were not merely ornaments, they were expressions of affection, daring creativity, and Princess Margaret's genuine passion for craftsmanship. Many were the result of her encouragement of young British jewellers whose daring designs helped define a new era of royal elegance. And truly, what better time could there be to share these luminous tales than in the month of July, the very month dedicated to the ruby itself, a stone symbolising vitality, passion, and strength. So, prepare yourselves for stories that sparkle even brighter than the gemstones they describe, stories filled with humanity and emotion beneath the surface of royal grandeur. And as we reach the finale of this journey, I have saved a particularly enchanting piece, one seldom mentioned and rarely discussed. It is a delicate, almost miniature brooch, its entire history not recorded in official archives but preserved instead through something far more personal, a small, handwritten note from the princess herself. Before we delve into the first of her dazzling ruby treasures, it's worth pausing for a moment to understand the kind of collector Princess Margaret truly was. She was far more than a passive recipient of inherited jewels or family heirlooms. Instead, she was an active, discerning, and deeply knowledgeable force in curating her own magnificent collection. She sought out young, daring jewellers, commissioned original works from them, and on more than one occasion conceived and designed her own pieces. There was an unmistakable intention behind everything she acquired. One particular detail, I think, captures her devotion perfectly. Author Merrin Wingfield, who meticulously studied the princess's jewellery collection, once observed, "Princess Margaret is the very definition of a great collector. She was meticulous about keeping each jewel in its own individual box. Every piece was carefully recorded, catalogued, and each carried its own story. And it is precisely those stories, the emotions, history, and artistry behind each jewel that we are here to explore together. So, let us begin with a piece that became almost a signature of her style, one many of you have likely seen in photographs, spanning decades. It is a charming floral brooch, crafted by Cartier in London in the year 1948. Imagine, for a moment, the post-war world in which it was created, a time of renewal, elegance, and quiet optimism. The brooch itself is not grand in scale, yet it radiates vitality and grace. Its heart and leaves are formed from glowing oval rubies, while the petals shimmer with brilliant diamonds. The result is a design both delicate and full of life, embodying her vivacious personality. According to records from Christie's, the piece was originally designed as a clip brooch. At some later point, Princess Margaret had it altered into a traditional pin fitting an intimate, practical change that likely erased the original Cartier signature. Still, she treasured it, always keeping it in its original red leather Cartier case. Such a detail might seem small, but it speaks volumes about the care and respect she showed toward her jewels. This brooch accompanied her through nearly her entire adult life. She wore it casually by day, pinned to her coat at the Epsom Derby in 1955, and yet she could transform it effortlessly into evening elegance. For example, at the London premiere of Dr. Zhivago, she paired it with several other splendid ruby pieces, including her magnificent girandole earrings ones we shall examine closely soon. But she never restricted her creativity to traditional use. Princess Margaret was famous for reimagining how jewellery could be worn. She would often place this same brooch among the curls of her elaborate updo at gala performances, letting the rubies catch the stage lights as though alive. She continued wearing it well into her later years, a constant and faithful companion. There is a memorable photograph taken at Kew Gardens in 1991, where she appears effortlessly chic in sunglasses, her familiar ruby flower gleaming proudly on her dress. When her jewellery collection was finally brought to auction after her passing, this beloved brooch was expected to fetch between £10,000 and £15,000. Yet, such was the fascination, and perhaps the affection for this iconic piece, that it sold for an astonishing £108,000. Today, its whereabouts remain unknown. This brooch, more than many others, feels like a true extension of Princess Margaret herself. It is a genuine sorrow, I think, that it no longer resides within the royal family. How fitting it would have been to see her daughter, Lady Sarah Chatto, wear it today, a living continuation of her mother's elegance. There is always a certain melancholy when jewels so rich with personal meaning vanish from the royal collection, taking with them a small but vivid fragment of history. But the tale of her floral jewels does not conclude with that single brooch. In fact, that cherished piece had a perfect and equally captivating companion, her exquisite ruby and diamond flower clip earrings. Created around the year 1950, these earrings were designed to beautifully complement the Cartier brooch, forming a harmonious and radiant pair. Each earring features a central oval ruby, glowing with deep crimson fire, surrounded by an enchanting arrangement of brilliant, pear-shaped and baguette-cut diamonds that catch the light with every movement. Though they were not crafted by Cartier, they arrived in a finely made fitted box from another of London's great jewellers, Carrington and Company, a name synonymous with refined craftsmanship and royal elegance. Princess Margaret began wearing these earrings shortly after her marriage, and they quickly became another of her lifelong favourites. She frequently paired them with the ruby flower brooch, creating a perfectly coordinated floral suite that radiated sophistication and charm. The combination was unmistakably hers, a blend of classic femininity and the confident glamour that defined her style. Yet this elegant floral set was not the only dazzling pair of ruby earrings in her impressive collection. For occasions that demanded heightened drama and regal splendour, she turned to another extraordinary creation resting within her jewellery box. As mentioned earlier, for her most glamorous evenings, such as the celebrated London premiere of Dr. Zhivago, she often complemented her beloved brooch with a pair of earrings of breathtaking magnificence, her ruby girandole earrings. Designed in the timeless and graceful girandole style, these jewels embody old-world grandeur and artistry. The term girandole refers to the chandelier-like arrangement of a central top element supporting three graceful pendants that sway elegantly beneath. Each earring features large, luminous, pear-shaped rubies framed by an intricate lattice of diamonds, all suspended from a rich ruby and diamond cluster at the top. The effect is both opulent and refined, perfectly suited to a princess known for her commanding sense of presence. The craftsmanship evokes the romance of a bygone era, while the boldness of the design mirrors her individuality. What adds an irresistible air of intrigue is that the origins of these earrings remain something of a mystery. There is speculation that they may have been a gift from a shipping company, just as several of her other jewels were, but no definitive record survives to confirm it. This uncertainty only enhances their allure, leaving us to wonder about the untold story behind their arrival in her possession. Princess Margaret began wearing the girandole earrings in the middle of the 1950s, and they quickly became a signature part of her public image. They appeared prominently in her celebrated 26th birthday portraits, captured by the legendary photographer Cecil Beaton, images that forever immortalised her as a symbol of royal glamour, independence, and artistic flair. In those early glittering years of her public life, Princess Margaret often chose to wear the magnificent girandole earrings with the graceful halo scroll tiara, a pairing that perfectly captured her flair for regal glamour tempered with modern sophistication. As the decades passed and fashion evolved, these earrings remained one of her steadfast favourites. They appeared time and again, accompanying her through eras and occasions, alongside her other great tiaras, such as the delicate and romantic lotus flower tiara and the commanding Baltimore tiara. She seemed able to pair the girandole earrings with nearly anything, from formal gowns to more understated evening ensembles, and they never failed to radiate a sense of timeless elegance. There is even a memorable photograph of her wearing them at a dinner with the former American First Lady, Nancy Reagan, an image that beautifully illustrates her confidence and poise as both a royal and a woman of her time. These earrings, so central to her image, were eventually included in the Christie's auction of 2006. Their pre-sale estimate was modest, valued between £5,000 and £7,000. Yet, as so often happens with pieces so deeply connected to her legend, the final hammer price far exceeded expectations, reaching an astonishing £54,000. And much like her treasured Cartier brooch, their present whereabouts remain shrouded in mystery, leaving admirers to wonder who might now possess these storied jewels that once graced a princess's ears. But Princess Margaret's taste in jewellery extended far beyond these grand, traditional designs. She possessed an exceptional eye for artistry and a particular appreciation for the bold elegance of the Art Deco era. Her collection included two strikingly different bracelets from that period, each showcasing a unique facet of its style and spirit. The first, created around the year 1920, is an exquisite open-work diamond band, so delicate and refined that it almost appears weightless. Its stylized scroll motif is adorned with 7 cushion-shaped rubies, each one glowing softly within the intricate lattice of diamonds. The craftsmanship reveals a mastery of balance between strength and grace, structure and airiness. It was preserved in its original pink leather case from the renowned jeweller Carrington and Company, adding yet another layer of provenance and charm. One can easily imagine the deep sense of history that accompanied it, the whisper of an era defined by beauty, innovation, and quiet sophistication. Then there was another remarkable piece from that very same era, created around the year 1925, yet it possessed an entirely different character and mood. Where the earlier bracelet was delicate and romantic, this one was bold, structured, and unapologetically modern. Its design is a celebration of confident geometry, reflecting the vibrant spirit of the roaring 1920s. The bracelet features a striking composition of graduated step-cut diamonds, each perfectly framed by a sharp border of vivid caliber-cut rubies. The effect is both architectural and assertive, exuding a sense of power and precision that captures the essence of Art Deco design at its peak. But this bracelet also carries within it a fascinating secret from its time. The luminous red stones that frame those diamonds so beautifully are not natural rubies at all. They are synthetic. Yet before one rushes to judge that as a lesser choice, it is vital to understand the context of that revolutionary decade. As Christie's note so aptly explained, the use of synthetic gems in fine jewellery during the 1920s was not considered inferior. Quite the opposite. It was regarded as a hallmark of innovation and modernity. Synthetic stones were admired for their purity and consistency. They allowed jewellers to achieve flawless symmetry and intense uniform colour that natural stones could rarely provide. They were easier to shape into the exacting, crisp lines demanded by contemporary design, giving artisans the freedom to explore daring new forms and aesthetics. In essence, their inclusion was a deliberate artistic choice, a reflection of design philosophy rather than financial compromise. This bracelet, therefore, stands as a perfect symbol of its time, a union of craftsmanship, technology and style, where tradition met modern invention. Through it, Princess Margaret's collection reveals not only her appreciation for beauty, but also her understanding of the evolving language of jewellery, one that celebrated both history and progress with equal grace. Margaret would sometimes choose to wear both of these exquisite Art Deco bracelets together, stacking them elegantly upon the same wrist. One can easily picture the striking visual contrast, the ethereal delicacy of the 1920 design paired with the bold geometric confidence of the 1925 piece. Together, they formed a stunning dialogue between lightness and strength, past and progress. When combined with her beloved Cartier ruby flower brooch and those magnificent girandole earrings, the effect was nothing short of breathtaking, a radiant layered composition of rubies and diamonds that shimmered with life. It was a bold and unmistakable statement of glamour, one that perfectly reflected her unique sense of individuality. These choices reveal how deeply Princess Margaret appreciated beauty in its many forms. She respected traditional craftsmanship and the elegance of established styles, yet she was never content to remain rooted in the past. Her taste was dynamic, forward-looking, and deeply personal. She had a sharp eye for innovation and a genuine curiosity about the evolving world of design. More than simply a collector, she became a patron, an active supporter of creativity and talent, particularly among the new wave of British jewellers emerging in her time. Among the artists she championed most passionately was the celebrated designer John Donald, a graduate of the Royal College of Art. He was one of the leading figures in what became known as the British Jewellery Revolution of the 1960s, a movement that sought to break away from rigid tradition and redefine what fine jewellery could be. His work was sculptural, organic, and experimental, capturing the free spirit of the era. It was her husband, Lord Snowdon, himself a designer and photographer of refined taste, who first introduced Princess Margaret to John Donald. That introduction marked the beginning of a professional relationship and, in time, a genuine friendship that would span decades. Through Donald's bold creativity and Margaret's adventurous spirit, the two forged a lasting connection, one that reflected not just her love of jewels, but her understanding of them as art, innovation, and self-expression combined. This remarkable set of brooch, accompanied by a pair of ear clips, was created for Princess Margaret much later in her life, during the years 1982 and 1983. Its design stands apart from the classic symmetry of her earlier jewels. John Donald envisioned something fluid, imaginative, and alive. The result is a composition both organic and abstract, where form and texture seem to move in harmony. He crafted a delicate network of openwork cells in richly textured gold, each hollow shimmering like a honeycomb touched by light. Nestled within these golden frameworks are exquisitely carved drops of ruby and sapphire, their deep colours enhanced by a subtle scattering of diamond sparkle that adds just a whisper of brilliance without overpowering the design. According to Christie's, the technique used to create the hammered, irregular edges of the gold was entirely unique to this commission. Donald conceived it specifically to complement the contours and tones of the stones themselves, ensuring that every curve and reflection contributed to the overall balance of the piece. The result was not just jewellery, it was sculpture, movement, and colour fused into a wearable work of art. Yet what makes this suite truly special is not merely its craftsmanship, but its profoundly personal origin. The carved rubies and sapphires that form its heart were not selected or supplied by John Donald. They came directly from Princess Margaret's own private collection. These were stones she had cherished, now reborn through her collaboration with the artist. It was, in every sense, a shared creation, a dialogue between the jeweller's artistry and the princess's vision. She was not simply the client. She was an active participant, shaping and guiding the design of her own adornments. This set tells a story not only of patronage but of partnership. It shows Princess Margaret as a woman deeply engaged in the creative process, unafraid to experiment and to express her individuality through art. But beyond these collaborations, her collection also held pieces that spoke in quieter, more intimate tones, objects that revealed her private, even playful side. These were jewels not meant for grand appearances or public admiration, but for personal delight, small treasures that offered a glimpse into the more spontaneous and human side of a princess the public seldom truly saw. Let us return now to the very beginning of her story. Among the earliest and most tender pieces in Princess Margaret's collection was a delicate necklace believed to have been created around the year 1930. It is a simple yet enchanting design, composed of a graceful string of cultured pearls, each luminous and finely matched, separated at intervals by the tiniest ruby bead spaces that add a subtle glimmer of colour between the soft sheen of the pearls. The result is a piece of quiet beauty, gentle, innocent, and understated one that seems to capture the sweetness of youth itself. The exact origins of this necklace remain uncertain. No formal record tells us how it entered her possession, but it has long been said that Princess Margaret was photographed wearing this very piece as an infant in her second birthday portrait. If that story is indeed true, then this necklace may well have been one of the very first significant jewels she ever wore, perhaps even a treasured gift from her parents or grandmother. There is something profoundly touching in that thought. A tiny child adorned with pearls and rubies, foreshadowing a lifelong relationship with jewellery that would later come to define so much of her public image and private sentiment alike. When her collection was eventually brought to auction, this necklace was designated as lot number 1, the very first item to be presented for sale. It was a fitting choice, symbolically marking both the beginning of her personal history and the start of that extraordinary event. And fittingly, it did not disappoint. The modest little necklace far exceeded expectations, selling for nearly 20 times its estimated value. Its success at auction was not merely a reflection of its materials, but of the emotional resonance it carried, the quiet power of a piece that had, in all likelihood, been with the princess from the very start of her life's glittering journey. Another treasure that whispers of those earliest years is a charming ruby and diamond bar brooch, an elegant piece that bridges the world of sentiment and sophistication. The brooch itself dates back to the late 19th century, a period celebrated for its refinement and timeless craftsmanship. Its design is simple yet exquisite. A slender bar adorned with a central ruby glowing like a tiny ember of life, flanked by glittering diamonds that lend the piece both balance and brilliance. But what makes this jewel truly captivating is not merely its appearance, it is the story carried in the box that held it. The original case bears the year 1931 delicately inscribed on its lid, and according to the detailed notes from Christie's, that inscription was written in Princess Margaret's own hand. Considering that the princess was born in the year 1930, it is widely believed that this beautiful brooch was a christening gift presented to her at the very start of her life. The thought of such a tiny infant receiving a jewel of this grace and quality feels both moving and symbolic, a first token of the royal elegance that would accompany her through every stage of her life. Despite its age, the brooch has a wonderfully timeless quality. Its restrained design and perfect proportions would not appear the slightest bit outdated even today. It is the kind of jewel that transcends fashion, refined enough for the past, yet effortlessly at home in the modern world. Personally, I could never refuse such a piece for my own collection, could you? These early jewels, this delicate brooch and her childhood pearl necklace, speak of the cherished child, the beloved daughter of a close and affectionate family. Yet, as Princess Margaret grew older, her jewellery began to tell new stories. Her personal collection slowly shifted from representing sentiment and innocence to reflecting her blossoming independence, her vibrant spirit, and the bold, playful personality that would make her one of the most distinctive figures in royal history. And perhaps nothing captures that intimate, mischievous, and delightfully playful side of Princess Margaret's personality more vividly than this next extraordinary suite. It consists of a striking bangle and a matching ring, both designed in the form of majestic tigers. Unlike the regal tiaras and formal jewels so often associated with royal appearances, this set feels daring, modern, and full of character, a world away from the solemn glitter of state occasions. It is jewellery that smiles, bold, alive, and brimming with wit. The suite was created in the vibrant 1960s by the celebrated Italian designer Faraone, often referred to as the David Webb of Italy for his bold imagination and his mastery of sculptural animal motifs. The craftsmanship is nothing short of remarkable. The tigers are rendered in dramatic black and white enamel stripes, their sleek forms brought to life with exquisite attention to detail. Each has glinting ruby eyes, tiny but vivid sparks of colour, and the two fierce yet elegant heads meet at the front, clasping a diamond-set link gently between their teeth. The design is both luxurious and playful, perfectly reflecting the spirit of the era and the woman who wore it. This suite offers a rare glimpse into Princess Margaret's more flamboyant and adventurous side, a side that revelled in self-expression and modern design. She was famously photographed wearing the full set at the London premiere of the film The Magic Christian in December of 1969, radiating confidence and contemporary glamour. In that moment, she seemed every bit a fashion icon of her generation, royal by birth, but utterly modern by choice. The journey of these remarkable pieces did not end with her. Even in recent years, the tiger ring resurfaced at auction, this time offered separately from its companion bangle. Its reappearance serves as a reminder that these jewels were not merely adornments, but vivid statements of individuality. This suite, perhaps more than any other, reflects her joy in personal style, her delight in whimsy, and her refusal to be confined by convention. Yet beyond this playfulness and flamboyance, Princess Margaret's private jewellery box also held treasures of a different kind, pieces imbued with emotion, memory, and deep personal connection. Many of these were linked to the person she loved and admired most in her life, her mother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, whose influence and affection were present in so many of her most meaningful jewels. That deep and enduring connection to her mother is beautifully reflected in yet another treasured piece from Princess Margaret's collection. This time, a charming and elegant little wristwatch crafted by Cartier. Created around the year 1940, the watch exudes all the hallmarks of the Art Deco period. Clean lines, refined symmetry, and a sense of understated glamour. Its shoulders are set with delicate, caliber-cut synthetic rubies, adding a touch of vivid red to the cool sophistication of its design. Once again, the use of synthetic stones reveals the sensibilities of the era where modernity, precision, and style were celebrated as much as rarity or opulence. These rubies were not substitutes, but deliberate artistic choices chosen to reflect the contemporary fascination with innovation and sleek craftsmanship. Yet, what truly makes this piece remarkable is not its aesthetic beauty, but the story behind how it came to belong to the princess. It was given to her as a Christmas present by her beloved mother, Queen Elizabeth the Queen Mother, when Princess Margaret was just 20 years old. Imagine the moment a young woman on the threshold of adulthood, receiving from her mother a watch that symbolised both refinement and affection. It was not a newly commissioned creation, but a piece already touched by history. According to Cartier's provenance records, the watch had lived a small, quiet life of its own before ever reaching royal hands. It had first been owned by another client, who sold it back to Cartier in August of 1950. Only a few months later, in December of that same year, the Queen Mother purchased it for £100, selecting it specifically and lovingly as a Christmas gift for her daughter. There is something deeply touching about this gesture, the choice of a piece that already carried a past, gifted from a mother to her daughter as a token of care, connection, and shared elegance. In this small but exquisite watch, one can almost feel the warmth of that bond, the blending of royal tradition with maternal love, captured forever in the gleam of gold, diamond, and ruby. And continuing with these deeply personal heirlooms, we come to a bracelet that, at first glance, appears just as intimate and understated as the Cartier watch. It is a slender line of old-cut diamonds, subtle, refined, and luminous in its simplicity. Yet, at the very heart of this graceful piece rests a beautiful natural pearl, soft and lustrous, flanked on one side by a cabochon ruby and on the other by a deep blue sapphire. The combination is delicate yet meaningful, a quiet interplay of colour and light that speaks of both restraint and elegance. But while the watch tells a tender story of a family Christmas in the 1950s, this bracelet's history begins much earlier in another country and indeed another world altogether. It once belonged to Her Imperial Majesty, Empress Maria Feodorovna of Russia, the sister of Britain's Queen Alexandra. Imagine, for a moment, the imperial splendour and grandeur of the Russian court, from which it came the glittering chandeliers, the ceremonial jewels, the long echoes of empire. After the Empress's passing, the bracelet found its way to Britain, carrying with it the aura of a vanished age. In the year 1929, King George V presented it as a Christmas gift to his wife Queen Mary. The tradition of royal gifting thus continued, and more than 2 decades later, the bracelet changed hands once again. In 1951, it was given as a 21st birthday present to Princess Margaret, connecting her not just to her own royal lineage, but to the broader tapestry of European history. One can easily imagine the wonder of receiving such a gift, to hold in one's hands an heirloom that had graced the wrist of an empress, then a queen, and now a princess of the modern age. Its beauty lies not only in its craftsmanship, but in its lineage, a silent witness to generations of regal lives and moments. It is clear that Princess Margaret was not merely an owner of jewels, she was their custodian, preserving their stories and carrying them forward into a new chapter. And as with so many of her treasures, great and small alike, the path of this bracelet eventually leads back to one name that threads through her collection like a signature, her most beloved jeweller, Cartier. Her collection overflowed with Cartier's exquisite artistry, and among its many treasures was a particularly charming piece, a delightful brooch crafted in the year 1938, designed in the form of a daisy whose heart gleams with cabochon rubies. The petals, perfectly balanced and full of gentle movement, radiate a sense of innocence and joy. At first glance, it might appear to be a simple, cheerful accessory, yet this modest jewel holds a surprisingly important place in royal history. For Princess Margaret, this daisy brooch was not merely decorative, it was symbolic, chosen with a sense of tenderness and intention. She wore it for one of the most meaningful family occasions of her early life, the christening of her nephew and godson Prince Charles in the year 1948. The image of her wearing this bright, ruby-hearted flower on such a momentous day feels beautifully appropriate. There is something quietly poetic in that choice. The young princess selecting a piece that embodies vitality, renewal, and joy to mark the birth of the future king. The daisy, with its timeless simplicity and radiant warmth, mirrored both her own youthful charm and her instinct for personal expression through jewellery. It served as a subtle yet elegant gesture, an adornment not of grandeur, but of affection and optimism, welcoming a new life into the royal family with grace, colour, and unmistakable heart. And if we journey even further back in time, we find within Princess Margaret's collection a pair of truly exquisite Belle Epoque hairpins crafted by Cartier in Paris in the year 1907. These delicate creations are masterpieces of early 20th century artistry, each one formed as a graceful arch, meticulously set with caliber-cut rubies and shimmering rose-cut diamonds. The balance of colour and light in their design is breathtaking, a perfect example of Cartier's refined craftsmanship during an era when jewellery was as much about poetry as adornment. One can easily imagine these hairpins catching the light in a grand Parisian ballroom over a century ago, their rubies glowing softly beneath chandeliers. They represent not only beauty, but history, a glimpse into the elegance and sophistication of a bygone age. After Princess Margaret's passing and the subsequent Christie's auction of 2006, It seems that the story of these remarkable pieces came beautifully full circle. It is widely believed that Cartier themselves purchased the hairpins back, reclaiming them as part of their historic archive. This belief is supported by the fact that photographs of these very pins have since appeared in publications documenting major Cartier exhibitions, including the celebrated one held at the Vienna Museum. Such a return feels entirely fitting for jewels of this calibre. To have them preserved once again by the house that created them more than a century ago ensures that their story and the touch of royal history they carry will endure, admired not only as ornaments but as living witnesses to the artistry and legacy of Cartier at its finest. And within Princess Margaret's collection were jewels whose provenance lay even closer to the very heart of the British monarchy pieces that once belonged to her grandmother, the formidable and elegant Queen Mary, tracing back to the earliest days of her royal life. Among these historic treasures was a particularly exquisite example of Belle Epoque craftsmanship, a magnificent ring centred around a marquise-shaped diamond, encircled by a delicate border of finely cut rubies. The combination of the fiery red and the icy brilliance of the diamond creates a harmony that feels both regal and deeply romantic, a perfect emblem of its time. The story behind this ring is as extraordinary as its beauty. It was presented as a wedding gift on the 6th day of July, 1893, to the Duchess of York, who would later ascend the throne as Queen Mary. The giver was none other than her father-in-law, the future King Edward VII. Imagine, for a moment, the young Duchess receiving it on the morning of her marriage, a symbol of welcome into the royal family, radiant with promise and tradition. It is truly remarkable to consider that this very ring, sparkling with history, marked the beginning of Queen Mary's long and storied journey as consort, matriarch and collector. Decades later, to find it among the possessions of Princess Margaret is to see how these jewels were not merely inherited objects, but threads in a living tapestry connecting generations of royal women, each leaving her own mark on the legacy of beauty and heritage they shared. And then there was another remarkable piece, an ingenious brooch dating from around the year 1908, a true testament to both creativity and craftsmanship. This particular jewel is known as a target brooch, a design that was both fashionable and delightfully innovative for its time. What makes it so exceptional is its reversible construction, a series of concentric circles set with different gemstones that could be rotated to reveal either rubies, sapphires, or emeralds. With this clever mechanism, the brooch could transform in an instant, adapting to any occasion or colour scheme. It is a work of both artistry and engineering, a small marvel of early 20th century jewellery design. This imaginative piece, too, once belonged to Queen Mary, and its story carries the warmth of personal sentiment. It was a gift from her husband, the future King George V, presented to her on Easter Day in that same year, 1908. One can picture the gesture, a young royal couple exchanging tokens of affection that were not only luxurious, but infused with thoughtfulness and meaning. These, then, were the jewels of her grandmother's legacy, artistic, refined, and steeped in royal history. Yet, as the story of Princess Margaret unfolds, we come to two rings that stand apart from all others, for they tell not of inheritance, but of her own life, her own emotions, and her own identity. Of all her personal stories, none was more defining than her marriage to Anthony Armstrong Jones. His arrival marked a new and daring chapter in her life, a moment when tradition met the modern world. He was a photographer, an artist, a man from outside the established aristocratic circles, and his presence in her story symbolised a bold departure from the conventions that had long shaped royal unions. When they became engaged in the year 1960, the ring he presented her with was as distinctive and creative as the man himself. Being a designer, he did not simply select a ring from a jeweller's case, he conceived it, shaped it, and created it specifically for her. The design took the form of a tender rosebud, a delicate and deeply personal reference to her middle name, Rose. At its heart glowed a radiant ruby, surrounded by a luminous halo of diamonds, an elegant and poetic reflection of both their love and his artistic eye. What makes this exquisite vintage ring so distinct from the more minimalist designs of today lies in its proportions, particularly the surrounding diamonds. Rather than forming a fine, delicate halo, the stones are larger and more pronounced, giving the impression of petals unfurling one by one around the ruby's vivid heart. The result is a design that feels soft, yet sculptural, romantic, yet unmistakably confident. It is a piece that speaks not only of love, but of individuality, embodying both the artistic vision of Anthony Armstrong-Jones and the radiant personality of the woman who wore it. In another quiet, yet meaningful break from royal tradition, he chose not to commission the ring from Garrard or Cartier, the standard bearers of crown jewels and aristocratic design. Instead, he turned to the distinguished English jeweller, S.J. Phillips, known for its refined craftsmanship and intimate approach. This decision alone reflected his unconventional nature and Margaret's willingness to embrace something more personal and authentic, something that belonged solely to them. Sadly, unlike many of Princess Margaret's other famous jewels, we have no clear, high-quality photographs of this extraordinary engagement ring. In the official portraits released to mark their engagement in February of 1960, and in various press photographs taken during that same period, only the soft outline of the ring can be discerned on her finger, a teasing silhouette of sparkle and mystery. There is, however, a bittersweet explanation for this. The fortunate part of the story is that the ring was almost certainly never sold. It is believed to remain within her family's private possession, an heirloom of personal rather than public legacy. Yet, for admirers of her jewellery and those who treasure the history of royal adornment, that very fact carries a quiet disappointment. Because it was not included in the famous Christie's auction, we have no detailed professional documentation, no close, precise photographs to preserve its every curve and facet. It remains a hidden gem, its beauty known only to those few who have seen it in person, existing now more as legend than artifact. A fitting fate, perhaps, for a ring born of love, artistry, and quiet rebellion. So, while that remarkable engagement ring eloquently symbolises her transformation into a wife and partner, the other great ruby ring in Princess Margaret's collection speaks to something far deeper and older, her very identity as a princess of the blood, a woman born into heritage rather than defined by marriage. This ring, regal yet deeply personal, represents the lineage and independence that remained constant throughout her life. Unlike the elusive engagement ring, this particular piece was included in the Christie's auction, allowing us the rare privilege of seeing it in vivid detail through the beautifully preserved professional photographs. Its rich red stones and immaculate design reveal not only fine craftsmanship, but also the boldness of her taste. Perhaps because of these clear images, it has become one of the most frequently misidentified jewels in royal history. Time and again, its picture appears in magazines and articles discussing her engagement to Anthony Armstrong-Jones, mistakenly labelled as the ring he designed for her. Yet that, of course, is not the truth. The real story of this ring is entirely different, and in many ways it reveals even more about who Princess Margaret truly was. It is a testament not to romance or duty, but to individuality, creativity and legacy. It embodies her sense of self as a royal in her own right, a woman unafraid to shape her own narrative even within the constraints of tradition. Through this ring, we see not merely the image of a princess, but the essence of her character, elegant, assertive, and uniquely her own. This particular ring is one of the most personal and revealing pieces in Princess Margaret's entire collection, for it was not inherited, nor commissioned, but designed by her own hand. She took 3 exquisite oval rubies, gems that had been given to her as a deeply personal gift from her mother, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and decided to create something entirely her own around them. The result was a ring of striking elegance and balance, one that merged sentiment with artistry in a way that only she could. The 3 rubies are beautifully aligned across the centre, glowing with rich crimson warmth, while on either side sit shoulders of sleek, baguette-cut diamonds, clean, sharp, and architectural in their precision. Encircling these are rows of smaller, brilliant cut diamonds that lend a soft shimmer, catching the light with every movement. The effect is both regal and modern, classic yet quietly daring. It is a design that feels deliberate, confident, and unmistakably hers. There is something profoundly telling in this act of creation. Princess Margaret was not simply accepting the jewels of her lineage, she was shaping them, reinterpreting them, and breathing her own vision into their legacy. By using stones from her mother, but setting them in a design of her own making, she transformed inherited history into personal expression. In that choice lies a subtle but powerful statement. It shows her reverence for tradition, her understanding of where she came from, but also her determination to define herself within that legacy. The ring stands as a perfect reflection of her spirit, poised between past and present, between duty and individuality. It is, in its quiet brilliance, a declaration of identity, elegant proof that even within the boundaries of royalty, Princess Margaret was always, unapologetically, her own woman. And so, at last, we come to the final piece in this glittering chronicle, a jewel that, while neither the grandest nor the most valuable in terms of materials, carries a story richer and more poignant than any other. It is a tiny, antique bee brooch, crafted around the year 1890, small enough to rest on the tip of a finger, yet vast in its sentiment. The body of the bee is formed from cat's eye chrysoberyl, a stone known for its soft, silken glow that seems to shimmer with quiet life when caught by the light. 2 minuscule rubies glint as its eyes, and its fragile wings are delicately set with diamonds, as if frozen mid-flight. But its true beauty, of course, lies not in its craftsmanship alone, but in the tender, multi-generational story it carries. The tale begins at the very dawn of the 20th century. In the year 1900, this little bee was presented as a christening gift to a 7-week-old baby girl, Lady Elizabeth Bowes-Lyon, the child who would one day become Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. It was among the very first pieces of jewellery she ever owned, a tiny token of love marking the start of a royal life that would span an entire century. Decades later, on the 10th of February 1945, that same bee was passed from mother to daughter. The Queen Mother gave the brooch to her younger child, Princess Margaret, gifting not merely an ornament, but a fragment of her own childhood, a piece imbued with memory, continuity, and affection. We know this story with absolute certainty because something remarkable was sold alongside the brooch, a small, handwritten note from Princess Margaret herself. In her elegant script, it reads, "Almost first bit of jewellery given to Mum, given to me the 10th of February 1945. Those few words, so simple yet so profound, reveal the heart of the piece. It is in that note, more than in the diamonds or the rubies, that the brooch's true value resides. It shows that Princess Margaret understood precisely what she held, a tangible link to her mother's earliest days, a jewel that shimmered not only with light but with love, memory, and the unbroken thread of family that bound them both across generations. And it is precisely for this reason that one cannot help but feel a deep sense of sadness about the fate of this particular little brooch. When you consider its touching, intimate history, the way it journeyed from a mother's infancy to her daughter's hands, carrying with it a century of love, it feels profoundly tragic that it ever left the royal family. This was not merely a piece of jewellery, it was a thread of memory, a tangible embodiment of affection, devotion, and legacy. To think of it passing into private ownership, separated from the lineage it once symbolised, is genuinely moving. It feels like one of those rare treasures that ought to have remained quietly within the family, an heirloom not for display, but for remembrance, to be cherished privately and passed from generation to generation as a whisper of love preserved in gold and stone. And so, From dazzling public glamour to the most personal and tender of keepsakes, we have reached the end of Princess Margaret's ruby story, a journey through jewels that spoke not only of beauty and status, but of identity, artistry, and emotion. Each piece revealed a different facet of her life: the bold collector, the loyal daughter, the creative spirit, and the woman of deep sentiment beneath the royal facade. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, exploring these radiant fragments of history. I'm always fascinated to know what you think. What do these jewels, with all their sparkle and symbolism, tell you about Princess Margaret as a person? And was there one piece, perhaps, whose story resonated with you the most? If you'd like to continue discovering these extraordinary tales of heritage, artistry, and human connection, I would be truly grateful if you subscribe to the channel. There are so many more stories yet to share, stories that shimmer just beneath the surface, waiting to be told. Until then, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again very soon.